Good evening. Let's call the school committee meeting to order. Time is 6 o'clock. Today is Monday, December 17th. Our next meeting will take place on Monday, January 7th at 6 p.m. here in the Senior Center. And what we're going to do now is pledge allegiance to our flag. We'll then have a moment of silence for our veterans. Then we'll have our clerk call the roll to ensure that we have a quorum sufficient to meet tonight. And then we'll get into this evening's agenda. So if there aren't any questions, I'd ask everyone to please rise and salute our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence in honor of all of those who have fought for our country and continue to do so today. Thank you. We'll now have our clerk call the roll. Here.
Ms. Beardsley?
Here.
Ms. Bornaro?
Here.
Mr. Drummy?
Here.
Mr. Froyo?
Here.
Mr. Iavina?
Here.
Ms. Leon?
Here.
Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
Ms. Spadafora?
Here.
Superintendent Notary?
Here.
Student Representative Stump?
So we have a quorum sufficient to meet. Let's get into this evening's agenda. First on the docket is the approval of the minutes from November 5th, 2018. This is the regular session. Motion by Mr. Iavino, seconded by Mr. McCarthy. Any questions on those minutes? You've all had a chance to look at them. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously. Now we're on to the executive session minutes of November 5th, 2018. Everybody's had a chance to look at those. Motion by Mr. Iavino, seconded by Ms. Bordenaro. Any questions, queries, qualms, concerns about those minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously. We're now at item number 2 on the docket, which is public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the community to address the school committee. If you wish to do so, please address the podium, state your name and address for the record, and just try to keep your remarks brief. Public comment is now open.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Jessica Harrelson, and I'm an Everett resident, but I teach ESL at Malden High School.
Okay.
I'm also a member of the Malden Education Association Executive Board. First off, thank you so much for the opportunity to address you today, and thank you so much for your service to the Malden Public Schools by serving on the school committee. First, I want to express gratitude on behalf of Malden faculty in your wise leadership in passing the Fund Our Future resolution. We're very grateful that you've taken a stand, asking the state legislature to fix our billion-dollar funding shortfall in the Commonwealth. As you well know by now, Malden is underfunded by $18 million annually. This is money that could be providing the teachers and wraparound services that our students deserve. But today I'm here to urge you to go perhaps a little bit further. Perhaps you could meet Malden's representatives on Beacon Hill and remind them what is at stake with regard to the foundation budget. Advocates like Senator Jason Lewis and Stephen Altrino are already friends to education, and thanks so much for that. But it's time to ask Senator Lewis and others to take the lead on this critical issue of fixing the foundation budget. Sometimes big numbers can hide the reality of budget cuts. As an ESL teacher, I know full well what an amazing job our team does with our students. Yet despite the magic of my colleagues, we're not always wizards. I wonder if our state reps and senators know that some of my ESL colleagues at the Salem Wood, for example, are teaching beginner ESL classes with sometimes over 35 students, when the vast body of research on ESL instruction recommends class sizes of 15 or fewer as developmentally appropriate. Once again, please know how much Malden teachers applaud your moral leadership already in this regard. We hope to see you continue to hold our representatives accountable to fixing the foundation budget to more accurately represent the needs of ELLs and our special education students so that Malden can truly fund the schools our community deserves. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just so the members of the school committee know, our school superintendent will be on Beacon Hill tomorrow, representing all that we've discussed for the past several months and years. Anybody else wishing to address the school committee can do so now.
Deb Gesualdo, President of the Malden Education Association. Good evening, Mayor Christensen, Superintendent Oteri, and members of the Malden School Committee. Tomorrow, the Fund Our Future Coalition kicks off the Fund Our Future campaign at the Massachusetts State House at 2 o'clock. The Fund Our Future Coalition is made up of community groups and labor organizations, including but not limited to the Massachusetts Education Justice Alliance, the Massachusetts Teachers Association, and the American Federation of Teachers. Tomorrow, at the campaign kickoff, our very own Malden High School student, Barukdi Sige, will be speaking, as well as Superintendent Oteri. We here in Malden know all too well the pains of the underfunding of public education in Massachusetts. The Fund Our Future Coalition has come together with the goal of passing legislation by May 1st to increase funding for pre-K through higher education, public education, by $1.5 billion per year. It was just a couple of months ago that the Malden School Committee passed a resolution to urge the Massachusetts legislature to pass legislation to change the foundation budget. So I'm here before you this evening to urge you to continue your advocacy with your elected state officials around this issue and to talk to everyone you know and ask them to do the same. Our students only get one chance at their education, and the time for change is now. If we all work together and get everyone we know to work together, we can make this happen. The time for fully funded public schools is now. The time for fully resourced schools is now. The time for smaller class sizes is now. The time for equity is now. The time for great public schools for all students is now. Thank you.
Thank you. To the members, we also did just have our state delegation up at the mayor's office as you requested, and this was at the top of the agenda, and the feeling that I got was sometime early to late spring they think they're going to make this happen, but we'll see. We just have to continue to, keep pushing, support the MEA, and fingers crossed something will happen. Anybody else wishing to address the school committee can do so now. We just ask that you state your name and address for the record. Okay, hearing no more, we'll close that portion of the meeting. We'll now hear from our school superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Nature's Classroom field trip for the Forestdale School will happen from May 1st to May 3rd. The sixth graders are going, so at this time I'd like to call up Principal Don Concannon to the podium, along with one of his students to provide some details.
Okay, Principal Concannon.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. This is a trip that we did last year, and the location has changed, and we changed the dates a little bit, hoping for a little bit better weather. They were a little bit wet last year and a little bit cold. So, but the location has changed because New Hampshire no longer is part of Nature's Classroom where we went last year. So that's why they're going to Connecticut, and everything is in the packet before you. We brought a student, and Ms. Patino was a coordinator for the trip, and he went on the trip last year, and we brought him so he could give you a little bit of insight if you have any questions for him.
Okay.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for having us here to discuss this trip. So as was stated, the proposed dates for the trip are May 1st to May 3rd, and we are planning on going to Andover, Connecticut. The cost is $281 per student, but we are receiving a 15% block grant for financial aid, so it'll be $239 per student after that. Currently, we have funds just totaling over $1,500 so far fundraised. This coming Wednesday, I believe you all received an invitation as well. We're hosting a talent show to raise additional funds, which at this point seems like we're going to be raising a fairly good amount of money to go towards this trip. We have the talent show and raffles there as well, which should generate a lot of funds. We're also planning on doing a penny war to generate additional funds. Last year it raised just over $1,700, and we'll do a hat day as well multiple times, which raised just over $300 last year. Last year, our fundraising totals made it to $7,789, which brought us definitely to get every child there. No child was not able to go due to funding issues. The only students that stayed behind were by choices of parents or other concerns that they had, and they had alternate field trips and activities related to the curriculum. So at Nature's Classroom, there are 3 big goals: exploration and discovery for students, experiential living, and team building and community. In terms of getting information to parents, if the school committee approves, there will be a parent meeting in January where Nature's Classroom representatives come and explain it to the parents. Other important things, students are given a packing list so they know exactly what they need to bring with them. Parents will provide all the paperwork necessary for any medical issues. And this site is actually really nice. It's a little different than the others because it provides linens and sleeping bags and everything like that, which could definitely take a burden off some of the students and their family. In terms of sleeping arrangements, there's a dining hall that doubles as a dorm for approximately 60 students, and there's another arrangement, there's another building as well. During the day, students are supervised 24/7, and at night, they're either with a trained counselor from Nature's Classroom, and they have all been quarried, and they are also with their Forestdale teachers when they are not with the Nature's Classroom staff. There's medical attention on site at all times. There are EMTs on staff, and we can request an RN if necessary for any students. Students can have their emergency medical devices at the location. Of course, they are either held by the Nature's Classroom staff or by their teachers, depending on who they're with at that time, but they're always able to access any emergency things that they need. The Nature's Classroom staff is also CPR and first aid certified, so if there are any issues immediately, that can be easily taken care of. The other really nice thing about this particular location is that we're the only school there because it's a smaller site, which can alleviate any problems that could arise from having a larger group of students. And that's how it was at our last location, coincidentally, and the students just had an amazing time and they learned a lot, and it was really nice to have them just together because they really got to grow with each other. In terms of meals, that's another concern that parents typically have because health-wise, everything like that, the meals are very accommodating. They have options for anyone with dietary restrictions, gluten-free, vegetarian, anything like that. They're very easy to accommodate all of that. So at this point, I think those are all the logistics, but I'd like to turn it over to Praveen, who can tell you a little bit about his own experience and why he believes that the students this year should have that same chance.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Christensen, Superintendent O'Terry, and members of the school committee. I think that the 6th graders should go to Nature's Classroom this year because it's educational and it's a good experience for many students. First of all, you can learn about forests and forest preservation, environmentally good habits, your impact on the environment, and like a bunch of different science-related topics. The 6th graders should go again because it's a good experience to gain independence. It's a fun way to learn about nature and environment. You can get to know your friends more. You can learn to live away from home, and for many, it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Very good.
We actually do have a second student, Brianna, who also
Okay.
attended the trip, and she's going to tell you a little bit more.
Okay,
He really liked being away from his parents as well.
So, good evening, Mayor Christensen and Superintendent O'Terry and the members of the school committee. So, my favorite parts of Nature's Classroom is the night walks that we did to learn about how nature is like at nighttime, basically, how the animals adapt to it. And like the field groups where we learn about different things, the cooking in the woods, how we learn how to basically use what nature's provide us to cook anything, basically. The songs and dances that we did at the end, the karaoke and the storytelling of the whole thing. And basically the whole experience in general. So I personally think that the sixth graders should go again because it keeps them off their phones since like they're mostly on their phones. It allows them to connect with nature, like how like the trees help us have oxygen to help us breathe, and take in what nature has and to offer for us. Also, bonding experiences with others, because when I went, there was some kids I never talked to since I went there. Now, like, we're close friends, so yeah. I think it's educational because you learn about hands-on science and nature, and you learn about how animals adapt to the environment. Also, how us humans affect the environment. So yeah.
Excellent. All right, let's take some questions from the members. Any questions? Ms. Bordenaro.
I have a couple of questions. The first one, under cost, it says plus transportation fees. Do you know what those transportation fees are?
Last year, I believe they were about $500, but we're still working that out. It depends on what we use. Last year, we used, I think, a school bus and a U-Haul to transport all of the students' belongings. So we'll have to still calculate that as well. That's something that is still up in the air pending approval.
Okay. The next question I had was the sleeping arrangements. So are students all in that one space? Like how are they paired up or?
Yeah, so at the last one, it was separated by boys and girls cabins. I believe it will be something similar. I need to call to confirm because unfortunately that information wasn't clear to me on the website, so I need to go back and just confirm. But they do have two separate dorms, and we're the only school there. So I'm sure that we would separate either obviously by gender or it would be separate rooms.
Okay. And lastly, how many chaperones are you expecting?
We're expecting to have 2 male chaperones and 2 female chaperones, which is what we had last year, and that was a really good number for us because they also have the Nature's Classroom staff.
And how many are college graduates out of the, you say you have 4?
For our chaperones, it's all teachers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All set, Ms. Bordenaro?
Thank you.
Okay, let's go over to Ms. Beardsley.
Thank you so much. I just, as a science teacher and as someone who formally has done something like this, I really just want to applaud you. It's a huge undertaking to fundraise and to provide this for students, so I thank you so much. I just wanted to ask again, if there are students this year that want to go and feel like they can't go, or what the percentage was of students last year or this year that don't go. Just curious.
Yeah, so last year, I think it was 12 students stay behind. They went on one-day field trip with a teacher that stayed behind, and the other days they worked on, we tried to make it curriculum similar to Nature's Classroom. Obviously, we couldn't do everything, but we tried our best to kind of mimic what they were doing so that they could still have hands-on learning activities and stay in like the Nature's Classroom curriculum without actually going. And the students that didn't go all chose not to go, or their parents chose for them not to go. There was no issues with like budgetary things. It was only like strictly choices not to go.
And I 100% are behind this, and it's such a great experience, a game changer for students, I think. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beardsley. Any other questions? Just from the chair, I agree with Ms. Beardsley. Very thorough presentation. Hats off to you. Could I just ask the 2 students to step back up? Would there be anything that you would change based on your experience about the trip?
Well, it's not much that I would change because it's a good experience overall.
Okay.
If I had to change one thing, it would probably be...
Make it longer?
I don't really think there would be anything that I would change.
Okay. All right.
I would probably change like the choices, like how many we could do per day, because like I'm pretty sure it was only 2. Like I wish it could be like 4 or like 5.
So expand the number of
Yeah.
choices? Okay. All right, good. Thank you. Let's hear from our school superintendent before we vote.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also 100% endorse this endeavor. I think you've listened to our 2 outstanding students who have talked about their experiences. I think it was learning without that formal classroom setting where they took back a number of ways in which they learned and how it can be applied in our everyday life. what their reflections are. So I think these are great experiences for our young children.
Okay, very good. There you have it. What's the pleasure of the school committee? Motion by Mr. Drummy, seconded by Mr. Iavino. Is everybody clear on what we're doing? Okay, this is to support the request. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? The ayes have it, carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Staying under the superintendent's report, we now are going to take up Malden Reads. And do you want to introduce it, Superintendent?
I will, and again, I'd like to thank the Forestdale School and our two students and Ms. Patino. At this time, I'd like to call upon Malden Reads and the representatives. Is Jody Salk here?
Yep.
She is. There she is. Jody Zalk and her team to the podium to inform the school committee of the activities planned as well as the selected books for the year. Malden Reads, for those in our audience or that may be viewing this, is a great community partner that is a wonderful promoter of literacy and community engagement, and we are very proud to work with them.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mayor Christensen, Superintendent Oteri, and members of the school committee. We really wanted to come forward this evening and thank you all for the opportunity to speak and to thank you for your support over the past 8 years. We're entering our 9th year of the program, and we wanted to share with you this evening a sampling of our companion books for students in the public schools, as well as to give you a very brief background. And then we also wanted to introduce a member of the schools who will be presenting with us, Stephen Adele, who's the librarian. So we wanted to let you know that this year our main book selection is The Tea Girl of Hummingbird Lane. It's a wonderful book about one of the themes that we're focusing on is really involving members of the Chinese community to participate and engage more with the program, and we're reaching out more with them than we have in the past. We also wanted to, of course, promote the love of literacy, engage the community, and build literacy and make those community connections. So I'm going to turn it over to my co-facilitator, Anderso Rose.
Thank you, members of the school committee. I'm just here really to explain that Malden's One City, One Book program is a unique partnership. We are a group of community volunteers that are working in collaboration with the Malden Public Library and MATV, Malden's Media Center. And those two community organizations, the library and MATV, serve as the fiduciary agents, and they provide staff and resources to this project. And although there are many One City, One Book programs throughout the country, Malden's program is among the most vibrant and expansive. And we are so proud to be part of this effort, and we commend the work of all the volunteers involved in Malden Reads. So I'm going to bring up Stephen Nadell, who will tell you more about this year's books. Thank you again for the opportunity to present.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Christensen, Superintendent Oteri, and of course the members of the Malden School Committee. I am Stephen Nadell, Clifton Street, so if you need that for the record. I'm the K-8 traveling librarian for the Malden Public Schools. Some of you may remember me from my years of service at the Malden Public Library. But I just was invited to say a few words about what I've been doing this past year and how I integrate the Malden Reads program in my lessons. Thanks to the tireless efforts of committee member Tara Beardsley, we're able to, the Malden Schools has made it a priority to return library studies to the curriculum. So I want to thank everyone for that. Every day of the week, I go to a different school, and with the indispensable help of parent volunteers, I try to ensure that the Malden students have access to the school library for pleasure reading and enrichment. And it's been incredibly rewarding to encourage a love of reading and intellectual curiosity for so many students. One thing I have done is to make available to the schools last year's age-appropriate companion books for Malden Reads. These are a few of them right here. Little Blue and Little Yellow by Leo Leone. The Color of Us by Karen Katz, The Story of Ruby Bridges by Robert Coles, and Blue Sky, White Stars by by Sarvinder Naberhaus. So I would, I would make these books available for the teachers to borrow and to integrate into their curriculum. And some of the shorter books I would integrate into library read-alouds. The Color of Us and Little Blue and Little Yellow were very popular last year. And among this year's companion books is A Mother for Choco by Keiko Kaza. I actually just did this as a read-aloud for in Salem Wood for a third grade ELL class. And the word choice and the illustrations were fantastic. I mean, they were a class, some of whom knew very little English, but they were very easily able to follow along. And these really, the word choice and the illustrations really help to highlight the lesson of the story. That families may look different, but they don't have to look the same to be a family. So I just wanted to thank the school committee and Malden Reads and all the families in Malden for their amazing support. Thank you.
Okay, any questions of the committee? If I could just ask Ms. Durso Rose and Ms. Zalk, as with most of your books, I just get into them and never stop. So let me ask you about halfway through, is this based on a true story, or do they take liberties with a true story?
The story itself is fiction, but the author did a lot of research in China and traveled to that part of the world and studied the people. So the traditions and the culture that you learn about, as well as the history of tea, is real.
It's based on, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Ms. Spatafora?
Thank you. I just want to say what Malden Reads does is absolutely amazing. I think it allows me as a parent to read with my kids more, being able to provide the young adult books. I read with my 18-year-old. We were able to talk about it. Last year, The Hate You Give completely pulled me in. Me and Miss Beardsley were able to attend the lecture with Angie Thomas. I think what you're doing, it's really, it's not just in the schools, it's at home. So kudos, keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Not to get off track, but I will say this is one of the first times last year's book, the movie matched the book. It was really excellent.
Very good.
Yeah, very well done.
And we're going to be showing the movie at the high school once the DVD arrives. So.
Excellent. All right, so do you want anything else we need to do? Do they want to bring up the books? Or?
If we could just say one more thing, and we
Sure.
want to thank the superintendent and the principal of the Malden High School, but we will be having our opening celebration on Saturday, Saturday, January 26th. From 1 to 5, this is a little different. We're going to be collaborating with the Chinese Culture Connection, and this will be part of the Chinese New Year celebration. So we're incorporating the Malden Reads opening celebration with the Chinese New Year celebration because of the themes of the book. But we'll be enhancing their celebration along with the performances. We'll be having little breakout sessions and tea tasting and tea house, yes. So a lot of things in store. So please come if you can.
Excellent. How's that, Sue?
Just again, I'd like to echo what I said in the beginning. I think Malden Reads is a fabulous community partner that brings the community together, promoting literacy, which is obviously in the school's best interest as well. But I think it makes reading and learning fun, and we make a connection there with our own community. So I think they do amazing work with our young readers all the way up through our high school students.
Excellent. All right, thank you. You want to brief recess?
If it's possible, we'd like to present the school committee members with copies, samplings of this year's books.
Excellent.
For the companion
School committee
books.
will be in a brief recess.
Thank you.
Okay, school committee is back in session. Staying under the superintendent's report, there are two items left. One is the Malden High School Start Time Committee final report, and then we're going to hear from our superintendent on district updates and highlights. Superintendent O'Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last year, a Malden High School Start Time Committee was commissioned. It was comprised of educators, administrators, students, and parents, and they have their final report to present tonight. And at this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Charlie Conifrey, our Director of Athletics, Physical Education, and Health, and Ms. Deborah Gesualdo, President of the Malden Education Association. Both of these folks I'd like to personally thank for their time as the co-chairs of this committee. They put in a tremendous amount of work compiling surveys and analyzing the data from those surveys, talking to other school districts and other high schools that went through a start time change or process of that. So right now, I'm going to turn the microphone over to them to present their final reports after months of study and data collection.
Thank you, Mr. O'Terry. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the school committee. The Malden High School Start Time Committee convened over the course of last school year, 2017-18, was co-chaired by myself and MEA President, Ms. Deb Gesualdo. In addition, members of our committee comprised of high school principal Christopher Mastrangelo, high school guidance counselor Erin Craven, high school educator Michelle Filer, high school students Baruch D. Sige, high school student Angela Solis, high school student Felix Lee, and a parent Judy Lombardi, who currently still has one student and two graduates. Over the course of the year, we were tasked gathering information from stakeholders, groups regarding shifting the start time of the school, whether it would be later, keep it the same, or earlier, looking at very potentially unintended consequences of said shifts. Over the course of the school year, committee surveyed students as well as staff. Committee worked together on creating those surveys and looking at more than just the actual start time, whether we decide to move it forward, back, or keep it the same. And some of the things that we surveyed, we're looking at after-school activities, student jobs, high school sports, home and family commitments, and means of transportation to and from Malden High School, as well as sleep habits. Over the course of the year, after several meetings, I should say numerous meetings, the results of the surveys and stakeholder groups committee voted on the recommendation to put forth to the Superintendent O'Terry and Mayor Christensen regarding Malden High School start time. The recommendation of the committee is to keep the current start time at Malden High School. Some of the determining factors that resulted in the vote of more than 50% of the committee voting to recommend keeping the current start time were some of the things we just mentioned about student home life, mainly student jobs, having students that have to work, not just to have some extra money in their pocket, students that have to actually work to help pay the bills, whether it's electricity or groceries. Some of the other major things, and I'm a little biased, high school sports and athletics played a major role in it, as well as potentially inhibiting participation in said activities, whether it's at the high school level or the youth sport level. Pushing it back would negatively impact those specifically. During the committee's discussion, it was discovered that shifting Malden High School start time to later than it currently is now would negatively impact such things as the aforementioned youth sports, specifically in our 5K to 8 schools. We've worked diligently trying to increase participation in extracurricular activities across the district. The will of the committee is to honor the voices of the stakeholder groups by putting forth a recommendation to keep the current Malden High School start time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gesualdo, do you want to add anything, or?
As Mr. Conifrey said, we looked at the data we collected from both staff, and by staff, that includes the survey was open to teachers, administrators, education support professionals, cafeteria workers, secretaries, et cetera. And the survey was open to students. We had 2 separate surveys, and we really wanted to honor the will of the stakeholder groups. In both surveys that were given, over 50% of the respondents wanted to keep the start time or shift it earlier. And as Mr. Conifrey cited, there were concerns regarding things like student jobs, and we do have a significant amount of students who do work not just for pocket money, but to keep their families afloat, as Mr. Conifrey cited, to do things like pay for groceries, electric bill, rent, not just for pocket money. And I think to shift the start time to a later time could really have a negative impact on these students and their families. And I think we need to really honor that our students are doing more than just going to school and doing more than working for just pocket money. There were also students that were concerned about their athletics schedules because we do have shared fields. So it wouldn't impact just our high school athletes, it would impact our youth athletes. There were also concerns cited regarding participation in choral arts and theater arts programs. So there were a lot of different things that were looked at, as well as issues with transportation. So we really took a holistic look at different factors on both the staff and the student side. And I think the will of the group was to honor the voice of the people who took the surveys, and the majority spoke on it.
Okay, before we open it up to questions, just from the chair, what was the vote of the committee?
More than 50% of the committee voted to keep the start time.
How many members were on the committee?
We had 9 members on the committee. So that you see, I think you have our written report. So let me just make sure. So you have 7 bullet points there, plus Mr. Conifrey and myself. So there is 9 members, and we had over 50% vote.
So 5 voted to keep?
No, more than 50%.
So what was the vote? Did you take a formal vote?
We did, yes. We collected it.
What was it, 7-2, was it?
It was, so not everyone voted, some abstained, but we had, I believe, if I remember, it's been a little bit since I looked at it, but I believe at least 60% had voted to keep the start time.
Yeah, you're talking about the surveys, right?
Are you talking about the committee's vote?
Yeah, the committee, the final committee vote.
The final committee vote, more than 50%. So it was, I believe 6 of the 9 who actually casted votes.
I see. 6-3 to keep it?
1 abstained.
Oh, I see, okay.
I believe, yeah.
Okay. All right, let's take some questions. Questions of the committee. Ms. Beardsley.
I just wanted to thank you guys for your time. And I also just wanted to ask, was anything looked into? I've read a lot about flex schedules. So now the times are changing and we're going towards I just didn't know if this was just
Ms. Beardsley,
purely-
if you could just speak into the...
Oh, sorry, if this was just purely, just looked at just the start time changing, or did you look at different ways to schedule high school? We know times are changing, so I didn't know if anything else was.
We were asked to look at the changing the start time. I think flex schedule would actually be a matter of collective bargaining.
Get it.
Other questions of the committee? Just a few more from the chair. What did you hope? Let me rephrase. In order to change it, you said 50% roughly wanted to keep it, 50% wanted to change it. Did you ever discuss what you would hope the percentage would be to persuade you to change it? Was it 70%, 80%? What were you hoping for? Or was there never a target percentage that?
I know personally I would have to have an overwhelming
Oh, I see.
majority.
Yeah,
I would have to see 90, to almost
Oh, I see. Okay.
unanimous decision in order to change that. There's so many moving pieces to it that we thought negatively impacted our students.
Okay. And then finally, Mr. Conifrey, I thought the conference that we're in, aren't they changing their times, or is that a different conference? Is that Middlesex? Oh, okay.
Most Middlesex schools either have changed or are changing, and it still is a school-based decision or district-based decision.
Okay. Right. Do you want to add anything, Representative? You good? Okay. Anybody else, do you want to add anything, Superintendent? So you're just looking to place this on file, or?
Yeah, first I'd like to applaud the committee publicly for their work. They put in a tremendous amount of time. There were many times I'd go down to the conference room and they were there, full committee meeting and deliberating, so I think they took their charge very seriously and looked at all angles. I'd like to just underscore a point that I think was brought up several times during their data collection and when they were speaking with people, which is many of our students have to work. It's not a choice. They have to put food on their table, to pay the heating bill in the winter, to pay the electric bill. And I believe the shift in the start time later would cause many of our kids to forfeit their jobs, place their jobs in jeopardy, and most likely place many of these families in a food insecure or housing insecure position. So I think that that's a reality that we often overlook in urban education, that a number of our schools can't move our times because of the element of work. The Middlesex League, which did this as a league with the cooperation of the superintendents, is a suburban community where many of these challenges don't manifest. So I think that there wasn't that push that we had in those communities that you can here. I think the committee was looking for somewhat of a mandate in their responses, and I would put a mandate at like a 2/3 type of majority that would force this to be moved, and I think we were well below that. I think that there was, frankly, an ambivalence to move this later and a real need to keep it the same or earlier, which I found interesting as well. You know, we do know that there's a lot of research recently that says our teenage brains engage later, but the jury's out in terms of what that impact of districts that have moved that, but I think that the committee here did a very thorough job.
Let me just finally ask, were you both surprised? No?
No.
Okay, okay. I too just want to join the committee in really saying thank you. This is one that could have easily got lost over the summer because you started this last year. And so for you to stick with it, you know, we appreciate it. And I know the students who initiated this from, I think it was Ms. Filer's class, Generation Citizen, you know, I know they do too. So with that being said, if there's no further questions, I think we just place the report on file. And thank you once again for your service. Let's go back to our superintendent. We're now at district updates and highlights.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, we'd like to acknowledge that on Friday, Dr. Sandra Dona, our Assistant Superintendent for Student Services and Special Education, was her last day. She went back home to Western Massachusetts. We'd like to wish her the best and thank her for her great work that she did in the last year and a half here. She elected to take a job closer to home for family reasons, and we completely understood it, and we will miss her. In the interim, Ms. Maura Johnson, the former director in Malden, and Ms. Debbie Cannell will be splitting it. Debbie is the former director in Somerville of special education. They both have had about a 10-year working relationship with each other. And Ms. Cannell has done some consulting with us and training, so she's a bit familiar with our staff as well as Maura. So that's the plan going forward. Meanwhile, we are in the process of interviewing candidates to fill that vacancy and hope to have a assistant superintendent in place in January. The Malden Education Expo 2018 took place on November 6th during our Professional Development Day, and it was phenomenal. We had over 80 presenters, including some students and community members, and I want to publicly take this moment to thank all who organized. That was largely organized by Assistant Superintendent Dr. Chase and Natalia Brennan, our Director of Instructional Technology. They were did the yeoman work of coordinating that. We certainly learned a lot and are going to put that all into practice. We had great reports from our staff on the effectiveness of that. It was also wonderful to have the entire district at the high school collaborating and building relationships with each other, and we're looking to build on that for our upcoming one on February 15th. I have a little update on our libraries. We're in the process of purchasing books that are reflective of our multicultural population. Assistant Superintendent Chase, along with principals, directors, and our literacy team, and the recommendations from our consulting groups have selected many titles for our libraries. This is an important and overdue step in the process of making Malden more equitable and inclusive, and we will have that list published very soon. The SEI, the Sheltered English Immersion Redistribution, we are in the process of doing an analysis of that with most of our SEI students are housed at the Salemwood School, and we are in the process of analyzing the feasibility and the process of redistributing those students, or what we can do to make it more equitable. We are in the process of meeting with a couple consulting groups who have some familiarity with this, as well as the Department of Education. We met with one of the associate commissioners today on some thoughts on this. It's a colossal undertaking, to be very direct. The impact of this on the collective bargaining agreement, on the contract, on how students are assigned, the logistics of this, the budget, the hiring, and the training are all something that we need to analyze. It's not as simple as moving one class to one school and swapping that out. There are a number of variables that impact this. The bottom line is we want to make sure that we are best serving our students and making it an equitable and fair practice for both our students and our staff. But we are committed to this, and we will make this work. We want to make sure that we're doing it correctly. So we're doing this with guidance, with experts in the field, and to make sure that this enormous undertaking is one that does not get lost. Along the lines, we're in a staffing analysis. We'll be enlisting the assistance of some educational groups on our administrative team. Currently, as we have noted, we are an incredibly lean central office, and we need to augment our areas, in particular of curriculum delivery and support, as well as our social emotional services and providing support to our admin teams in our school. So we're looking at how to best do this in a responsible way that we can grow it in a model that supports the growth of our school district. We're also changing a few things for the mid-year and final exams. We'll move in to a previous format. This move comes following Administration Council and Directors meeting, where the topics of equity and access and related to exams were discussed. As a result of that meeting and prior practice, the middle school exams will be conducted as follows. There will be middle school exams. This is an important mechanism in generating the data that will help inform our instruction. The teachers will use the data from the tests as the basis for discussion for upcoming professional development sessions. The mid-year and final exam grades will not appear on report cards or will be calculated in students' yearly averages, but will be used for informational purposes as teachers discuss student growth and progress with parents and the students themselves, as well as with the directors and administrative staff. The window for exams will be open from January 2nd, will remain open through January 22nd. The principals will work with the staff to create a schedule that works for that building. So it will be building administered. A couple events that happened in schools. As You Like It, the Shakespearean play took place at Malden High School, November 29th and 30th, as well as December 1st. It was a terrific modern interpretation on the Shakespeare classic. Our Choral Arts Society performed at the State House on Thursday, December 6th, which was a terrific event at the Grand Staircase hosted by Secretary of State William Galvin. Our state delegation was there, as well as many passers-by, tourists, and state representatives who all listened to our incredible choral arts program. The Linden School hosted the Brothers Grimm Spectaculation-thon on Friday, December 7th. The Forestdale Winter Concert took place on Friday, December 14th, and the Ferryway Gingerbread Nation competition was also on Friday. Other events to note, the Malden Public Schools, as in coordination, or the Department of Education, let me restate that, employed Malden Public Schools in a billboard and television advertisement. So I would like to spend a special thank you to Ms. Darwin Shen, Mr. Alan Biscan, and Ms. Colleen Clifford, our families and volunteers, Ms. Stacy Rubin and Mr. Jamie Wilson, and our amazing students, Maritza Ramos Perez, Jessica Rufo, and Jordani Duan, for their working with the Department of Ed to create an incredible television commercial celebrating our amazing teaching staff at the BB School and within the Malden Public School systems in the community of Malden. A special shout out to Principal Barbara O'Brien and Assistant Principal Kevin Kilbride for coordinating the effort. If you want to view the commercial before it airs publicly on the airwaves, which will be in January and February, you can see it on our website. I believe I tweeted out a link to that as well, but it is on our website, and it's really special. I think it shows Malden. It's not identified as Malden, but it was our school, our students, and our community. So I think they did a nice job. On December 6th, we received a donation of 400 books from Stoneham Bank for our kindergarten through grade 2 students. Mr. Ed Doherty, the CEO of the Stoneham Bank, and Mr. Michael DeMarco both came to Malden High School to our office to deliver them. There is, if you are driving down Salem Street, the new electronic message board outside of Malden High School is up and running again. Thank you to a generous donation and fixing of that sign from Alltech Electric and John Spadafora. We'd like to thank him. It really looks nice. It's very high-tech and HD, and we're really looking at that as a great way to welcome people to Malden High School and be informed of the events there. The Middlesex Partnership for Youth and the Assistant District Attorney were invited by Ms. Barker of the BB School to begin a discussion on standing up for each other. This is taking kids out of the bystander role and into the upstander role and saying no to bullying and inappropriate behavior. This was the follow-up of some work that the Aspirations team at the BB School did under Mr. Hindle to begin the BB Bulldog Kindness Initiative. Malden Public Schools, as I noted in our last meeting, we are part of the Harvard RIDES program. RIDES stands for Reimaging, Integration, and Diversity for Equitable Schools. We sent our team, myself included, Dr. Chase, Ms. Van from the Salem Wood is a part of that, as well as Dr. Andara, Mr. Sepulveda, Mr. Mastrangelo, and Ms. Jeswaldo are part of our 7-person delegation that is taking part of the RIDES seminar this year. We're one of 7 schools in their cohort, the only Massachusetts school. We were there from on Thursday, November 8th and Friday, November 9th for 2-day training, which was terrific. Schools from San Francisco, Arizona, Connecticut, New York, Washington, D.C., we're all a part of this, and we are doing a tremendous amount of work with them. There's a monthly webinar and a lot of training, and we've begun that training with our administrative staff. We collectively acknowledge and are proud of our diversity, but we are in agreement as leaders that we have a long road ahead of us to make the Malden Public Schools more inclusive and more equitable. We're working with Dr. Denisa Amonte to do who will do some consulting and coaching with our staff, and we look forward to this work and updating our school community on this progress. This is a commitment that we are very proud to make. This will help our students and help our community, and we wear that quite proudly. On the Massachusetts Association of School Committee Conference, Ms. Beardsley, Ms. Spatafora attended down there at the Cape, and they came back with some great ideas and some connections. On November 11th, there was a celebration at Dever Park honoring our World War I memorial and the 100th anniversary of the armistice. The high school band and some of our students were the stars of the show with their singing and their playing. We had people from the State Archives and State Veterans Association who were incredibly impressed. They did a great job. On November 15th, the General Council of Italy, that would be Ms. Federica Serini, and from CASET, which is their cultural arm, Ms. Maria Giancondo Mata paid a visit. They are reestablishing their partnership with the Malden Public Schools. They have provided in the past and will like to continue to provide books as well as field trips and some professional development and entertainment for our students. They did a great job, and they're working with our Italian language program at the high school to further our students' understanding of Italian language and culture. They're a wonderful partner. I worked with them in a previous district, and I'm happy to engage with them, especially at the council level. She's been very impressed with what we do. On November 16th, I was one of the speakers at the Middlesex Partnership for Youth Conference at Essex Tech up in Danvers. I gave a presentation and slideshow on creating a welcoming school for immigrant students. It went over very well, used a lot of our examples here in Malden of what we do to help that and how schools can continue to foster that. On November 19th, at the Jenkins Auditorium, myself, the mayor, welcomed 179 new American citizens from over 50 countries. They took the oath of citizenship and swore their allegiance to the United States. It was hosted by the city of Malden, the public schools, and we have a federal judge that comes in and administers the oath. It's a wonderful event, really, I think is a real representation of what Malden is, a very multicultural city with people from all over the world. I'd like to thank Stop and Shop for their generous donation of 12 full-course Thanksgiving meals to families in need throughout the Malden Public Schools. They're a tremendous community partner, a vibrant entity here in Malden, and I'd like to thank them for the generosity. They'll also be doing a similar deed for the upcoming holiday season as well. They've been wonderful. We had the holiday parade on November 24th. It was a great showing by schools. The Forestdale School was the winner of the float competition for their Heroes-themed float. It was a terrific parade. The December edition of the Malden MATV show, Superintendent Salute, is out. Please don't watch it for me, but watch it for our three amazing students, Baruti Sige, Michelle Chan, and Pedro Canero Pasos. That show is up on MATV, but it's also on our website, the link to it. If you want to see student achievement and what wonderful work our staff has done with great kids these are three young people who have all received full scholarships. Baruti's received a Questbridge scholarship to Stanford. Michelle, and yes, that deserves an ovation. Stand up. And Michelle and Pedro have received full Posse scholarships. Pedro is going to Bucknell University, and Michelle is going to Center College in Kentucky. So again, they also deserve our applause as well. The Malden High School first ever unified basketball team celebrated their inaugural seasons with their coaches and parents and families at an awards banquet on November 27th. It was wonderful. This is one of the great sport events I've ever been to in my life, watching these kids. There will be a unified track team in the spring. I'd like to thank Mr. Conifrey and Assistant Superintendent Dona, who were the impetus to get this up and running. We're really proud of it. It shows sportsmanship and what athletics is at its finest. Upcoming events, I think as was mentioned earlier by Ms. Gesualdo and Ms. Harrelson, tomorrow at the State House is they Fund Our Future campaign. I've been invited to be one of the speakers along with our representative, former student rep to the school committee, Sige, Barukti Sige will also be speaking as well. We're excited about this event, as I think it will attract a great deal of media attention and hopefully put some spotlight on the fact that our schools and the foundational budget needs to be reviewed to increase our funding. Along those lines, I would like to publicly announce for the first time on Tuesday, January 8th, that's the day after our next school committee meeting, Malden will be a host site. There are 3 host sites across the state. Superintendent's Association is hosting 3 informational town hall type meetings. Malden will be one of them. The Jenkins Auditorium at 6 o'clock. The other 2 sites will be in New Bedford and in Fitchburg. We will be one of those sites for this forum on school funding and the foundational budget formula. There will be a panel. We are the North Shore site. We will begin publicity for this, but I wanted to get it out for our community right now. There will be a panel probably comprised of some a mayor or 2, possibly people from different school committees, possibly somebody from the teaching staff. It will not be Malden people because we will be one of several dozen districts here, but we're excited about this. We're hoping that this will be a big media attention grabber as well. We would love to have as many people turn out for this. We'd love to fill the Jenkins Auditorium. We will keep you informed as we continue to get information on this, but I did want folks to put this in their calendars now. We are also having a community forum parents information night. Right now it's scheduled for Wednesday, February 6th, 6 o'clock at the Salemwood on vaping. We hope to have a panel discussion there comprised of a couple people with some expertise in this field. Ms. Maureen Busby, she's from Public Health in Melrose and is a representative to the Middlesex Health Alliance and Partnerships for Youth. She's very informed about vaping and e-cigarettes, as well as a doctor from Cambridge Health Alliance. When we look at a lot of, and you'll see this coming up at the next school committee meeting when the youth risks behavior survey results will be presented. And there was an article in the Globe today about drug use across the state is generally down, but the vaping use has gone up and has risen. So this is a phenomenon that we really need to be equipped to handle. It's a concerning one because vaping, unlike cigarettes or other items that are smoked, is pretty undetectable. The scent can be scentless or it can smell like an air freshener. And we're concerned. We're starting to see an uptick of it here in Malden, where I think other communities have been dealing with it for a little bit longer, but this is something that's a public health issue, and we're looking forward to providing our families with some information to become better versed in this. And then lastly, before we go into winter break, I'd like to remind everybody that Friday, December 21st is our last day of the calendar year. All schools will be dismissed at 11 a.m. We do serve breakfast that day, but not school lunch. And just as a reminder, there are no after-school programs running that day on this Friday. A message from me will be going out to all families tomorrow. It's out on our social media account on Twitter at Malden Public. And we will, keep reminding folks of that. Our classes will resume on Wednesday, January 2nd of 2019. And that, at this point, Mr. Mayor, is my report.
Okay, let's take some questions. Anybody have any questions of the superintendent? Ms. Leon?
Just in regards to the after-school, does that run through Christmas vacation for the public school students?
No, it does not.
So there'll be no childcare at all for the public schools?
During the break?
Yeah.
That's correct,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, and they knew that when they sign up and paid. Those were dates that are, we don't provide any care, correct?
Other questions? Just one from the chair. Back up to those exams you were talking about. It sounds like that's something new. Can you just explain that one more time?
Was there a specific question you had on that?
Just, is that a new initiative undertaken by your office, or is
I
it a
think it
mandate
was a
from the state?
coordination of where it had been uncoordinated before.
So now it's going to be district-wide?
It's a district, it's a uniformity across the district. Part of when we're doing our work with the 5-district partnership as well, we're using that data, but we're making it uniform across the 5 K-8s, that's correct.
Okay.
I think the big thing is that the exam will not count in the semester grading, but we're using that as a way to inform and drive our instruction as well as our professional development.
All right, very good. Ms. Beardsley?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is that for middle school, you said? So it's 6,
Grade
7,
6 through 8, yes.
6, 7, 8, and it's all subject areas, or?
The core subjects, yes.
So science, math, ELA, probably.
Yeah, the 4 cores, yeah,
Having worked
all
in-
across, I'm sorry, all of our grades, subjects rather, in 6 through 8, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent. So if there's no other questions, we're going to drop to subcommittee reports and discussions. We just have one item there. Mr. Iavina will give an update on space and enrollment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The current enrollment in the Malden Public Schools as of Friday was 6,711. It is an increase of 78 since the start of the school year, but compared to last year's figures, we're 23 fewer students. So we continue to be on an even keel. There's nothing, no spikes in enrollment, and I think that will probably remain that way for the remainder of the year.
Okay.
Some up, some down.
Okay, any questions? I see Mr. Iavino too. Superintendent O'Terry now has those posted on maldenps.org.
Yes, I had asked Mrs. Federico to post that once a month
Right.
from each
Yeah.
school.
So if anybody wanted to see that, it's now
Exactly.
on there. Yep. All right, let's go to motions and resolutions where we have 2 of them. First is bullying prevention and intervention plan. That'll be Ms. Bordenaro. And then the second one we're going to ask to be tabled, which is the superintendent evaluation. So let's, I'm sorry, Superintendent O'Terry.
Sure. Before Ms. Bordenaro presents the bullying prevention and intervention plan, I wanted to thank Ms. Beardley and Ms. Spatafora for all their initial work they did in this matter at the Social, Emotional, and Physical Wellbeing Subcommittee. I just wanted to get that on the record.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent. Let's go to Ms. Bordenaro to open this up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I'd like to bring up our athletic director, Mr. Conifrey, to discuss and summarize the bullying prevention and the bullying prevention and intervention plan.
Good evening again. The bullying prevention and intervention plan, it's a comprehensive approach to addressing bullying and cyberbullying, and the school district is committed to working with students, staff, families, law enforcement agencies, and community to prevent issues of violence. Now, the plan tonight was to give you an overview of our plan for our bullying and intervention plan for school year 2018-2019. Not sure, do you have a bulleted list in front of you?
Yep.
Okay. If we could just kind of follow along and try to make this as quick as possible and touch upon as many points as we can without reading directly from the actual bullying and intervention plan. Throughout the school year, stakeholders from our leadership team meetings, our principal meetings, our director meetings, we've come up with and collaborated certain issues and things that should be directly put into this plan. And some of those people are obviously Superintendent Oteri, principals, assistant principals, myself, other directors, health teachers from across the district, physical education teachers from across the district, as well as principals, Peter Dolan from the Early Learning Center. So we tried to incorporate as many stakeholders so they could all have a voice in this specific plan. The resources that we have throughout the district to implement, help bring awareness to bullying and said intervention, principals, assistant principals, numerous guidance counselors, adjustment counselors, school attendance officers, licensed social workers, school nurses, school psychologists, consulting psychiatrists for the district in Dr. Xenia Johnson, physical health educators, physical education and health educators, as well as after-school and extended day program individuals. Some of the counseling and other services that were consulted, clinical healthcare agencies, the Malden Police Department, our SROs, our school resource officers, Middlesex District Attorney, Project Alliance, as well as DCF. The main portion that's coming up here, which I can speak on directly because it falls under health and physical education, is the academic and non-academic activities. Speaking on curriculum, the K-8, grades K-8, we strictly use, or I shouldn't say strictly, we mainly use the Great Body Shop curriculum. Within that curriculum, there is a specific unit which is titled Community Health and Safety, which involves violence prevention. Some of the things that are discussed and taught: how to define community, community helpers, how being a responsible citizen helps your community, specific rules and laws, unsafe and violent actions, safety routines to avoid violence and danger, and very specific bully prevention and cyberbullying. We also incorporated, which was from the recommendation of the Department of Ed, the MARC bullying and cyberbullying curriculum, which is, MARC is an acronym which stands for the Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center. They have a free curriculum from grades K through 12, which include curriculum components such as student programming, teacher and faculty support staff trainings, in how to engage parents. Specific bullying prevention approaches, which the Department of Ed has strict guidelines on, are things such as scripts and role-playing, bystander responsibilities, dynamics of bullying and cyberbullying, cyber safety, appropriate use of internet and other technology tools, life skills, and engaging students in safe, supportive environment that respect diversity and difference. Now, what is taught from K to 12 in our health classes is paramount. It's paramount that our health educators at all grade levels have the opportunity, have the resources to engage our student body in first knowing what is and what isn't bullying, the difference between cyberbullying and what a bystander is, It's imperative that we teach these skills as early as kindergarten and continue that all the way through graduation from, hopefully, Malden High School. Now, speaking on our responsibilities as a district, as far as giving, if there's an incident, provide staff with written notice, provide students and parents written notice of our specific bullying policy, and providing instruction on bullying prevention in all grades K through 12. Also in this plan discusses administrative guidelines and procedures, which each school principal and assistant principal should follow, as well as collaboration with families, how to. The plan also discusses problem resolution system. Basically, MPS will offer educational programs for parents and guardians that focus on parental components of anti-bullying curricula and the social competency curricula used by individual schools and/or district. Programs will be offered in collaboration with PTOs, school councils, special education parent advisory councils, Title I, and other organizations. Lastly, notification requirements. Malden Public Schools will notify parent guardians of the current plan and preventions as well as the curriculum taught in the classroom. Written notice each year relative to students, including internet safety policy. All notices will be available in hard copy as well as electronic formats in languages most prevalent spoken at home. And plan will be posted on the MPS website under district information. Thank you.
Thank you. To the superintendent, so are you looking for the school committee to adopt this plan? Or is this more an FYI?
This is we are looking for this. This is still, Dr. Dona had started this work. I want to also thank Mr. Connerfrey for stepping in and helping present this. But yes, we're looking to get this approved and up on our website and in our curriculum.
All right, let's take some questions from the members, if there are any, after a very thorough presentation. Mr. Froyo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for the superintendent. We had a meeting at the Linden STEAM Academy last week, and there was a question of whether they had their own bullying policy or they went by the bullying policy for the district.
Superintendent?
Yeah, they'll be using the district one. They're a district school. I think that the question that was raised was because the school district's last updated one on the website was from 2011, so she didn't know if there should be one developed by the school. I had informed the governing board that we were in the process of developing and having it approved. We actually worked with the Department of Education over the last year with this as well, so yeah, this would be for the entire district.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Froyo. We'll now hear from Ms. Spatafora.
Thank you. This is very thorough, details, a lot. I think we've always been on top of bullying or against it. Just one quick question when going through the main policy, and something in Malden that we have been utilizing. I haven't seen anything in here on restorative practices. I mean, specifically under like access to resources and services, or just, is that something that we could incorporate to say that we use restorative practices when it comes to maybe not necessarily bullying, but what leads up to bullying when you have, before it gets to that level?
Superintendent?
Yeah, it would not be the policy, but it would be a resource that's available to help prevent or help integrate students back in.
Okay.
But yeah, it certainly would be, along with any of our other social, emotional programs, such as our adjustment counselors, play groups and things like that that are developed. Yeah.
when it
Yep.
said identifying resources, and it listed adjustment counselors, school nurses, blah, blah, blah.
Right, so we can add that in, sure.
Okay, and,
I think that's worthwhile.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spatafora. Ms. Beardsley.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask something that we've talked about a lot is parents being on our families, sorry, being on the same page. And this is pretty dense, and is there a way we could maybe get a parent, some sort of a way to get this to families, and so that they'll understand and be able to support kids from home? Because I think oftentimes you go to the family and then you talk about it and they want to, or maybe even different languages.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. It is dense. Going on recommendations of the Department of Ed, we were trying to cross all Ts, dot all Is, and make sure that we had pretty much everything covered. Giving information out to the parents is obviously vital. Getting as many, I think it was mentioned several times, if you read throughout, dispensing information to families with the language that's most spoken at home. Obviously, we don't want to try to give them a 15-page document. We want to give them a condensed document, and we can definitely come up with a condensed version to possibly download off our website.
Thank you very much. I've found that a lot of families, this is sort of a new term, and I'm finding that a lot of students as well, they don't know what bullying is and they don't use it correctly. So I think it's something we definitely need to, and I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, one of the main aspects taught, and one of the first things taught is what is bullying, what is actually bullying, because it is it's a word that's used very loosely, but it's a very serious word. And I don't think students fully understand the actual meaning behind it. And parents, maybe parents as well. So it's important. There's organizations out there, especially, there's one major one, Boston versus Bullies, which incorporates sports and athletic teams, and they mainly focus on grades 4 to 6, but Mookie Betts is a part of it. They're a 501c3 organization who offers resources. So there's resources out there that we can pull in.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Beardsley. Superintendent?
If I just might add, I think just to dovetail on Ms. Beardsley's question, I think part of it is getting our students to understand that, and that work takes place in what I would probably term digestible chunks, starting with our preschool kids, right up through high school. But I think the curriculum work that takes place in our health classes is foundational to that, so that it will come out in I think, blocks that will help build our students the tools that they need to prevent it and to identify it and to be upstanders and not be bystanders, and to report it so that we'll have a much more harmonious school district. But I appreciate the support of the committee on this, because I think that we've put a great deal of effort into it. We're committed to making our schools safer and for all of our students.
Mr. Iavino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Confrey, I noticed that you mentioned that the Great Body Shop is the basic curriculum that you use in K through 6, the middle schools. Does anybody, or has anybody also used the Open Circle as a way to integrate, especially we're a school system where there's a lot of transfers in and transfers out, and so as a way to integrate and welcome new students into the classrooms?
Yeah, Open Circle's used in case-by-case basis, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Iavino. Any other questions? Just from the chair, Mr. Conifrey, in the report, it says there is a public comment period before the plan is adopted. Is that what this is right now? Or have you done public meetings leading up to tonight?
This is the only public, yes, tonight is the only public version.
And then there was some mention in there about a 4-year survey. What is that? You have to do that every 4 years?
So on the Department of Ed's website, they recommend at least once every 4 years. I would say 4 is pushing it. 2 maybe, if not every single year. The plan has to be reviewed and adopted on a yearly basis.
Oh, okay.
So hence, it would make sense to have a survey yearly.
And then just on the listing of the staff, they had at the Salem Wood, the principal and an assistant principal. I assume they just take a snapshot of the staff that's on at the time you adopt the plan? Not
Correct.
what- Yeah, not what might be a month from now, whatever.
Correct.
Because we're going to fill a, yeah, okay. And then the other one is just the student-led programs. I thought that was very interesting. So was that you and the people you spoke with that you're going to rely more moving forward on having students be a part of the solution?
I would say we would be negligent not to. I think it's vitally important that we engage our student bodies and have them speak out, come together, have open circles, have restorative practices where their voice is heard and they are leaders. We're not the ones being bullied. We're not the ones, we may be bystanders. We're there to provide resources for our students, but we want to make sure that our students feel supported and they have a voice, so yes.
That's great, okay. All right, so you're recommending, Superintendent? I
Yes, and
presume?
I just would like to also chime in on that question to Mr. Conifrey, because I think our kids are critical to this. We want to build them up with the support, social, emotionally, that we can, and we do that through a variety of resources here in the district. We want to continue to add to that so that our kids become better at identifying it, better at preventing it from happening, and better at, restoring that. So, combine that with our restorative practice commitment, as well as the great work I think we do in our health and wellness classes, as well as what work our counselors and our administrative team does, and as well as our staff, to make it a more welcoming and safe. So our kids are critical of that. They also give us a context, sometimes a cultural understanding that we might not have, and we know that they're the main reason for this.
Okay, so there you have it. We'll now entertain a motion. Ms. Bordenauer, I presume you want to make the motion since you sponsored the paper, seconded by Ms. Spatafora. So everybody clear on what we're doing here tonight? And I think it would just be, I don't know, it's a friendly amendment, Superintendent, to make sure that we add what Ms. Spatafora suggested.
Yes, I think for the record, we should note that we should add the restorative practices under the resource section of this.
Okay. So everybody good? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, the plan is adopted unanimously. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Conifrey. So again, the other item that's under here, superintendent evaluation for the 2017-2018 school year has been asked to be tabled. Do you want to add to that, Mr. Iavino? Nope. Any objection to that? Chair has none. So we're now at personal privilege. So I think what the game plan here is, folks, we're going to entertain points of personal privilege. Then we're going to go into executive session, depending on the vote, where we will discuss 3 items: contracts, non-union raises, and negotiations. To let the public know, we may come back out and act on some of them, and we may not. And then we will move adjournment. Is everybody clear? All right, so let's first take care of personal privilege. We'll go left to right. Mr. Drummy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things. The ELC is having a school council meeting on January 16, 2019. It's a Wednesday. The Ferryway this Wednesday is having their winter music sing-along. That starts at 9 o'clock with the 4th grade and ends with the 1st grade at 3:10. And on Spirit Day, which is Friday, even though it is a half day, the Blade, I guess, is coming. Ms. Hochter was able to get them, so he'll be at the Ferryway School in the morning. And then I believe there's also a 5 through 8 students are playing the staff, so that ought to be interesting. And other than that, I just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, safe and Happy New Year, and I look forward to seeing you all next year. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Drummy. Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to wish all of my other colleagues here on the school committee a very Merry Christmas and a happy, healthy, and prosperous New Year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Bordenaro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of things. Malden Overcoming Addiction wants to welcome anyone that wants to celebrate sober this New Year's Eve. It's going to start at 8 o'clock till about 12:30 a.m. Doors open at 7:30. You can find, it's going to be at Club 24 in Malden. You can find, there's a link on the website, Malden Overcoming Addiction's website, Facebook, or just there. You can just type it in on the internet. It is, you click on the link there, and it'll direct you to the tickets. Also, Families Against Drugs will tentatively be January 22nd at Malden High School. More details will follow. I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Healthy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bordenaro. Mr. Iavino.
Just the very, very same sentiment, a very Merry Christmas, a Happy Holiday, and above all, a safe and healthy New Year.
Mr. Froyo.
Thank you. I'd also like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and Happy Holidays.
Thank you, Mr. Froyo. Ms. Spatafora.
Thank you. So this Wednesday at BB, the first grade will be putting on their holiday show, and that will be at 1 p.m. Also on Wednesday, December 19th, is the BB School Council meeting, and that will be held at 5:30 p.m. Reiterate, Superintendent Oteri, it's an early release, 11 a.m. Don't forget your children. A Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and a happy one-year anniversary to the newly elects as we roll into January. We've survived a year, and I'm pleased to be sitting up here with all of you.
Thank you. Ms. Beardsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to announce that, just like you heard before, the Forestdale students and staff wanted to invite people to Forestdale's Got Talent show. It's this Wednesday, December 19th at 6 p.m. Students are very excited. Consider coming to join. Tickets are $5 for adults, $3 for kids, 2 and under come for free. And there'll also be raffle prizes. The Salem Wood grade 6, 7, 8 movie night, Tuesday, December 18th, 4 to 6. Grade 4 Bazaar is Tuesday, December 18th, and Wednesday, December 19th. Grade 7 Open Gym event is Wednesday, December 19th, and the K-4 Winterfest Saturday, January 12th, 2019, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so now, Mr. Iavino, you have a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that this committee go into executive session for the purpose of contract negotiations, non-union raises, and other business that may come before that committee.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. McCarthy. By motioning to go into executive session, this requires a roll call, so the clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Bielski?
Yes.
Ms. Bordenaro? Yes. Mr. Drummond?
Yes.
Mr. Froyo?
Yes.
Mr. Iavino?
Yes.
Ms. Leon?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Spatafora?
Yes.
Mayor Christensen?
Yes. We'll now go into executive session.
We go into the